Hello dear students, my name is Piyush Kumar and I welcome you all to today's video in which we are going to discuss the most important mistakes that are committed by the aspirants while they answer case study section of the ethics paper. I call them 7 sins because these are the most important mistakes that are committed by the aspirants, and it is because of these mistakes that the marks in the ethics paper suffer. But before we discuss these mistakes and learn from them, there are two important announcements for you. First is that we have uploaded the podcast with my dear student Aditya Srivastav, who has secured All India Rank 1 this year on our official YouTube channel. So please go to the video sections of our official YouTube channel of Vajiram and Ravi and watch the podcast in which he is discussing the various strategies and in particularly how he improved his ethics mark from 104 last year to 143 this year. Second important announcement is that on 24th of June at 6 p.m. we are going to have a seminar by my dear student Khushali Solanki. She has secured All India Rank 61 in this year and she was able to improve her ethics marks from 100 to 136 this year. So she will be discussing all the strategies that were used by her in improving her marks. I mean 36 marks is a huge jump. So you please come to that seminar and get all your doubts clear as to how you can prepare for this particular paper, and she will be answering all those doubts. 6 p.m. 24 June at Vajiram and Ravi. The session will be on online mode also. So now let us jump to the various mistakes that are committed by the aspirants. And one of the most common mistakes that is committed by the aspirant is that they misses out on the differential context that is there when it comes to case studies. See, in our ethics case study section, the case studies can be from public sector, it can be from the private sector, it can be from the NGOs, and all these sectors have their own ethical principle, have their own ethical keywords that you should use while you answer your case studies. For example, let us take the case of public sector. You know, oath of secrecy, you talk about the integrity, transparency, accountability, the principles, the role committee principles that are very specific to public sector. But when it comes to private sector, the principles of profit maximization, the principle of corporate social responsibilities, the legal context of Companies Act, trusteeship, stakeholder analysis, that become more important and more specific to the private sector. The Consumer Act, all these things become more important when it comes to private sector. So all I am saying is, whenever you are attempting the case study, you must not forget the kind of context that is there. But what I often see is that aspirants almost interchangeably and indiscriminately uses the principles that are given by Nodal Committee. They only know them and they use only them. For example, transparency, accountability, integrity, self-awareness, honesty. So they use these principles very interchangeably across all the kind of case studies that are coming across these sectors. See, I'm not saying that those particular keywords should not be used, but I'm saying is the more specific and germane ethical principle should be used beforehand because they provide more depth, more dimension to your case study. So that is something that you should take care of. See, in 2021, UPSC asked this particular case study. I would request you to pause this particular video and just go through this case study so that you understand that what was being asked by the UPSC. In this case study, UPSC asked that in the case of COVID, if you were the manager of the hospital, then what will be your justification and criteria for putting your clinical and non-clinical staff to attend to the patients, knowing fully well that it is highly infectious disease and resources and infrastructure are limited. So whatever argument you give, now you may give arguments, anything you give, and you are giving those arguments without thinking that whether this particular context is from public sector or private sector. See, in the next question, UPSC asked, if yours is a private hospital, whether your justification and decision would remain the same as your public hospital. See, UPSC is also making the clear distinction. In this particular question, UPSC asked you specifically that will your justification and criteria change if you are managing a public hospital or if you are managing a private hospital. My dear students, it is very important to look at the specific context. In your ethics syllabus also, the ethical dilemmas in public and private institutions is given as a syllabus topic. So if UPSC were to treat these ethical dilemmas interchangeably or indiscriminately, then that particular syllabus topic would not be there. So if UPSC is making the difference between these two contexts, whatever the context the question is coming from, so you should also understand the differential context the case study is coming from and use ethical terminologies and ethical keywords accordingly. Another common mistake that are committed by the aspirant is that a dull and repetitive introduction. See, there are normally 6 case studies that are there in your ethics paper, and I see more often than not, aspirants start with the stakeholder analysis very indiscriminately. And this particular type of introduction, the stakeholder introduction, if you start all the case studies with stakeholder introduction only, then it looks repetitive, dull, and unimaginative on your part. So what is required is that you must understand that there are kind of various introductions that you may use, and you should know that which type of introduction can be used in which type of case studies. For example, stakeholders type of introduction is very apt in which there are various stakeholders. Very simple as that. That the kind of case study in which there are various stakeholders, so use stakeholder analysis there. This is especially true when it comes to private sector case studies, because in private sector case studies there are not just company, there are suppliers, there are consumers, there are regulatory authorities, there are competitors, market is there, society is there, consumers are there. So you can basically provide various categories. You can divide people and institutions in various categories and answer and tackle your case studies very effectively when it comes to private sector. But at times there are case studies in which there are not various people involved, not various institutions involved. So if you start your case study from stakeholder in those particular case studies also, then it will backfire. It will not look great on your part, to do the same thing again and again across all the case studies. I think I'm recalling one particular case study from 2017 paper in which I think it has asked that suppose you are an aspirant and who is going to attend a interview in the UPSC, and while being en route to the UPSC Bhavan to attend the interview, you saw some accident, some road accident you saw, and those road accident, I think the mother and the child was injured, and you knew them, and so what will be your response? How will you respond to that particular crisis? So in this particular case study, the case studies is more of a case of dilemma. Okay, straight away you can start with your introduction from dilemma also, but stakeholder analysis will not be so much apt here because there are not so many stakeholders. Although, by creativity also you can include so many stakeholders. You can talk about the relative, the relative's relative, your relative, UPSC, India, society, etc. But it will be creative use only. It will not create much impact in the mind of examiner. So all I'm saying is, whenever you use stakeholders in those particular case studies in which there are various institutions or various people involved, so that the introduction is more apt. Similarly, at times, the entire case study identify a particular core issue. So you may simply start by writing that particular core issue, that this particular case study, talks about the core issue of work culture or the core issue of prejudiced attitude towards women. So that also kind of draw the attention of the examiner that you have grasped the essence of the entire case studies, and you are starting your introduction from that. Similarly, there might be legal context of certain case studies, where certain case studies come from the RTI, certain case studies have judicial context. Suppose there is some case study that involves the privacy issues, so you can quote case Potoswamy judgment, you can also quote Article 21, you can provide constitutional context also there, constitutional morality also there. So all I'm saying is that different case studies should have different types of introduction, and you should be very creative and imaginative on this part so that your introduction can be very good. It should not be dull and repetitive stakeholder analysis one after the other. You must do stakeholder analysis on your own in your mind, but you may not start your case study with a stakeholder analysis all the time. So that is another common mistake that I see when it comes to ethics case study answer writing. Another important mistake is that students don't often think like an administrator. See, I would again request you to pause this video and just go through this particular case study. This was asked, I think, in 2016 ethics paper by UPSC, in which you were asked to frame a compensation cum rehabilitation policy for the displacement of the person, because often the land is needed for the mining, dams, and another development projects, and the UPSC asked you what will be the key elements of your policy when you will be drafting compensation cum rehabilitation policy. So all I'm saying, what are the main elements of your suggested policy? So when you look at this question, aspirants often take this particular case study or this particular problem as a GS answer. Okay, like they would have answered in GS 1, 2, 3. So more often than not, their answer would limit to the aspects of SIA, EIA, or I would say a kind of compensation that should be given, job should be given, fund should be given, etc., etc. See, See, but that is only myopic view of this particular case study. When we answer case studies, you need to think like an administrator. When we answer case study, you need to think at a very broad angle. See, if you go through any law or any policy, you would see that such type of elements like SIA, EIA, or I would say the kind of benefits that are there, that is only one part of the entire policy. There are various other elements also. Let us say the case of Protection of Human Rights Act. So does this particular act only talk about the human rights? No, it also talk about the institutional structure that is required to deliver the kind of human right protection that is required in our country. It provides for NHRC, HSRC. Similarly, for this particular answer also, you must provide the institutional framework that will deliver this benefit. You must provide a detailed mechanism to ensure that there will be participation of people in the EIA. You should provide how will you ensure the just distribution of rewards and costs. Okay, almost this is the main answer that is often given by the aspirants, but they overlook the other part. Similarly, there are no meaning of rights and the compensation that is to be given if there are no grievance redressal mechanism. What is the meaning of a right if there is no grievance redressal mechanism? I'm sure you can relate with the fundamental rights. We have all the fundamental rights, but if there are suppose no writs, there are no protection by the courts, then there will be no meaning of those rights, right? So similarly, the grievance redressal mechanism must be there so that one can approach the various institutional framework, various institutions, if his or her rights are not given, are not followed to as per the policy that is given. Similarly, the monitoring system should be there. Monitoring system in which we can ensure that the particular policy is being implemented in letter and spirit. So my dear students, these are only some of the aspects that should be there. We do not have much space here to discuss all the aspects of the policy, but all I am saying is that you need to think like an administrator and you need to think in a very broad angle. Similarly, you must use the ethical terminologies here, the kind of social justice, the kind of social contract, all those ethical terminologies must be used while you answer this particular case study. So do not limit your understanding of the case study from only GS perspective. Think like an administrator and put ethical concepts there whenever you answer such case studies. Another common mistakes that are committed by the aspirant is that they write mechanical and shallow answers. See, when I look at the answers, there excessive focus on merits and demerits. I see the case study of the aspirants and they have filled at least 2.5 pages for the merits and demerits only, even when they are not asked by the question. So that is very much important mistake that they do. They spend so much of space and time in answering merits and demerits, even when they are not asked, and they write in a fashion that they become repetitive in nature. See, when we write merit and demerit, the merit of one option become demerit of others. It is like तेरे मस्त मस्त दो नैन मेरे दिल का ले गए चैन मेरे दिल का ले गए चैन तेरे मस्त मस्त दो नैन. So do not commit such mistake. Do not excessively focus on merits and demerits, because after a point of time they become repetitive and boring to read from the examiner perspective. So limit your merits and demerits and only write them whenever you are asked to evaluate certain options, only when you are asked to write merits and demerit very specifically by the examiner. Similarly, at times we focus more on actions. Actions mean I will do this, I will do this, I will do this, and we do not provide the kind of justification that should be given, so as to convince the examiner that why we are following this particular decision making. See, in case studies, you will often be asked, for example, suppose you are a young and dynamic SP who have recently posted in a district which is very prone to sand mafia, and you are taking action against the sand mafia, but the sand mafia is now threatening your family. I think this particular study was asked by UPSC also. So in this particular case studies, how many of the aspirants you think would say that, sir, I will seek the transfer from that particular district? Similarly, there are case studies in which, suppose you have noticed some wrongdoing in the government organization in which you are working and you have reported that to the senior management. But the senior management is asking you to overlook those particular wrongdoings, and they are saying that you will be given favor in terms of promotion. Otherwise, if you take action, then there will be false cases of rape against you, and the minister will not be pleased, the senior officials will not be pleased. So all sort of circumstances are created in these sort of case studies. But when you answer these case studies, how many of the aspirants you think will seek transfer from the district in the first case study, or will abide by the advice that is given by the seniors that okay, overlook this particular wrongdoing? I'm sure no one will adopt these particular decisions while they answer in the UPSC paper. The reality may be different, but at least if the UPSC UPSC paper, no one will adapt this particular decision making. So now how will UPSC differentiate the answers? How will UPSC award different marks? How will UPSC understand that what are the answers that are written with conviction, with courage of conviction, not just for the sake of writing? So that is why I say that you must provide arguments to substantiate your actions, that why you are taking a particular action, what is it that that is forcing you to take this action. It may be your conscience, it may be your image as a role model, it may be the idea of duty that is pushing you to do so. So all I'm saying is you must give due space to argument and not excessively focuses on the actions as if you are Robin Hood of certain area or something like that. Similarly, whenever you are giving argument, you must not give incomplete argument. What I mean by incomplete argument is, see, whatever decision you take, there will be certain demerits that will be there. See, in the first case of the sand mafia, your family will be threatened. In the second case, you might be slapped with the fake rape cases or posh cases that was written in the UPSC paper, okay? Or your promotion might be delayed, etc., etc. So and your posting maybe you might be shunted while giving the posting. So these sort of demerits are there whenever you make ethical decision making. So one important aspect is that you must address why those particular demerits are acceptable to you, why you are accepting, while you are making that decision, why you are accepting these particular demerits, why it is okay for you that someone might lodge false cases against you, why it is okay for you, why it is okay for you that a promotion might be delayed, why it is okay for you, why it is acceptable to you that you might be shunted and given some not so prestigious posting, so as to say. So all I'm saying is you must write the argument for that also. You may say that I have full faith in the judiciary, that the false cases will not stand in the court of law, Satyamev Jayate. You may write like that, but you must address that. You simply cannot say, no, I will take action against the wrongdoing, I will whistleblow, I will do this, I will do that, and there are no addressing of the kind of demerits that are following your action. So that is incomplete argument. You must address the demerits of the chosen course of action, whatever decision making you are doing. So you must not write shallow answer. The answer should have sufficient depth. Answer should have sufficient depth and dimension, and it should be able to convince the examiner about the course of action and the decision making that you have done. Another important mistake that are committed by the aspirant is the shallow reading of the case study. Often in the case study itself, there are various cues. UPSC provides various cues. If you read case study carefully, you would see that there are various aspects that you can use while you are answering them in the various questions that UPSC poses while you answer the case study. For example, let us go through this particular case study. See, you are working as an executive engineer. What does executive engineer means? Executive engineers means the framework of professional ethics will come into the picture. If suppose you are a civil engineer, then the safety and sustainability of the structure will be in the question. If you are a doctor, suppose you will be a doctor, then medical ethics would come into the picture. So all the applied dimension of the ethics will come into the picture, and you must use them while you answer the case study. So you are working as an executive engineer in the construction cell of a municipal corporation, government organization. So public sector ethics will come into the picture and are presently in charge of the construction. So basically you have certain responsibility. If something happens to this particular construction, does not happen on time or quality issues, that it is you who is responsible because you are in charge. So sense of responsibility is there. Responsibility is the keyword. Then there are two junior engineers under you. Under you means you are in a leadership position. So your leadership skill also being tested here, who have responsibility of day-to-day inspection of the site. So they also have certain duty to do and are reporting to you while you are finally reporting to the chief engineer who heads the cell. So basically final reporting means that hierarchy is coming to the picture. Organizational hierarchy, important element of Bavarian bureaucracy, administrative ethics. So hierarchy is also there. So you must use this while you are answering the question. Suppose if you are not following the advice of chief engineer in the options that you will be generating, then you may see that it is a violation of the organizational hierarchy. So all I am saying is that all these keywords are providing some ethical clue for you to write demerits and demerits and other arguments. While the construction is heading towards completion, two junior engineers have been regularly reporting that all construction is taking place as per the design specification. However, in one of your surprise inspections, you have noticed that some serious deviations are there, and in your opinion, see, it is your subjective opinion, they are likely to affect the safety of the flyover. Now, safety directly correlates to the quality of service delivery. Quality of service delivery, because the structure should be safe. Whatever service delivery you are saying, it should be qualitative. Your syllabus contains quality of service delivery as an important syllabus topic, so you must use that while you answer in your case study. So it is likely to affect the safety of the flyover, so you can use that particular keyword also. Rectification of these lacunae at this stage would require a substantial amount of demolition and rework, which will cause a tangible loss to the contractor. So substantial amount of demolition directly correlate to the utilization of public fund that is there in your syllabus. So you must correlate to that. And rework, which will require tangible loss to the contractor. So contractor is another player which has come into this case study. It will also delay completion. Again, the quality of service delivery, related to quality of service delivery. There's a lot of public pressure. Another important stakeholders are there on the corporation to get this construction completed because of heavy traffic congestion. Now this have environmental angle. Because of traffic congestion, the public suffering is there. Because of traffic congestion, environmental impact is also there. So you have another important points to write whenever you will be evaluating the various options in this particular case study. When you brought this matter to the notice of the chief engineer, he advised you that in his opinion it is not a very serious lapse and may be ignored. Now his opinion comes with two things: A, he is senior, and B, he has more experience. So that is also very important when you analyze the options. Then he advised for further expediting the project for completion in time. However, you are convinced. Convinced means what? Convinced means courage of conviction. Convinced means conscience. Okay, so all those keywords will come into the picture, because if you are convinced, then these two keywords, conscience and courage of conviction, will come into the picture, that this was a serious matter which might affect public safety and should not be left unaddressed. Okay, so when you read case study carefully, you will be able to identify various ethical issues which you may not identify if you do the shallow reading or very fast reading of the case study. So that is very, very important when it comes to case study. Okay. So another important aspect is that whenever you read case study, you should not just look at the keywords to draw various ethical perspective for the case study, but you should also look at the bigger picture, the systemic issue that is emerging from this particular case study. For example, whatever course of action you take, either you go for whistleblowing or you take investigation in your own hand, that is separate issue. Whatever decision making you take, you must also take care of the systemic issue. What is the systemic issue here? The systemic issue is the failure of internal risk management system that the two junior engineers have been regularly reporting. The construction is taking place as per the design specification. Why it was the case that the internal risk management was failed by two unethical persons? Why it was the case? So this is very important, that two people could fail the entire project, that it had to lead to the tangible loss to the contractor as well as the delaying of the completion. So all I am saying is that whenever you are answering the case study, please identify the systemic issue. Not just address the issue, but also the main systemic issue that led to this particular issue in the first place. So in this particular case, the systemic issue is failure of internal risk management, so that this particular tragedy could have been avoided beforehand. So there must be some third party audit that must be wo hona chahiye tha bar bar. So all those aspects should have been there when you answer this particular case studies. So that will add another depth and dimension to your case study answer writing. Then at times aspirants, they mistake the woods for the trees. Okay, so whenever you are asked to write ethical dilemmas, you interchangeably write ethical issues. Similarly, whenever you are asked to write ethical issues, you invariably write ethical dilemmas, as if both of them are the same thing. It is not the case, my dear students, that ethical dilemmas and ethical issues are not the same thing. See, I will give you two cases here. Suppose you are district magistrate of some place. There is one person who comes to you for some tender. Okay, you please give this tender to me and I will give you 1 crore rupees. Okay, and you accept that 1 crore rupees and give the tender to that particular person. Now that is scenario A. The scenario B is the same person comes to you, you are a district collector, and he puts guns to your head and he says, either accept 1 crore rupees and give me tender, or you lose your life, because he is having gun pointed to your head. Now, which of these cases, A and B, is the case of ethical issue, and which of these is the ethical dilemma? I think it is pretty much clear. The first issue is the ethical issue and the second one is a dilemma. So dilemma comes whenever there are conflict between two choices, two ethical values. So dilemma necessitates that there has to be conflict between two values and it becomes difficult for you to choose. For example, in the second case, it was very difficult for you to choose because you need to save your own life also. Yes, you need to save your own life also because the gun is pointed to your head. And at the same time, you are supposed not to take bribe for the official work. In the first case was ethical issue, because there was no compulsion to accept the 1 crore rupees. You simply accepted the 1 crore rupees and gave the tender to that person. There was no compulsion. It was simply a plain case of bribe. It was simply a failure of your ethics. So this was an ethical issue. So ethical dilemma is invariably written in the form of conflict between two ethical principles, two ethical values, and ethical issues basically is a violation of a particular ethical principle. So that is a difference between these two. So whenever you write these two things, do not write them interchangeably. Please go through the question paper very specifically and see what is being asked and write that only. Similarly, whenever you are writing ethical dilemma, do not write in indiscriminate fashion. See, at times I see student writes like this: ethics versus morality, short-term interest versus long-term gain. Arey bhai, how would the examiner know that what is the short-term interest in the context of case study, what is the long-term pain, which ethical principle you are talking about, which moral principle of yours you are talking about in which there are dilemmas? So whenever you are writing the ethical dilemmas, write very specifically and with respect to the context of the case study, because if you just dump keywords like this, it will create problem, because these keywords can be simply transported to other case study also. Yes, because there also be certain kind of dilemmas like that. So when you write indiscriminately the very generic keywords, then it creates problem. So you need to make the keyword case study specific by adding more specific detail to these dilemmas. Okay, similarly, you must not puke values and quotes. See, I'm sure while preparing for the ethics, you must be, rote learning various values and quotations. And when you put so much of effort in, rote learning of these values and quotation, you feel a sense of obligation for them to use in the examination hall. So much so that you start using them indiscriminately. You do not know the particular context in which they should be used. So it creates problem. You write integrity, honesty, courage, etc. Comma, laga, it creates problem. It creates problem because all of these keywords have a specific context in which they should be used. But if you use them indiscriminately, it simply highlights your particular shallow understanding, and the examiner will know, okay, this fellow, he has come just by rote learning of these particular values. So, and another important thing is you should not overuse thinker. Using thinker is important to substantiate your argument, but at times aspirants simply dump the quotation. They do not even care to relate that particular quotation to the framework of case study that is being discussed while they are answering the question. So that is another important issue that you need to take care of when you are writing answer, that you must not puke values and quotation when you are answering case studies. It is very, very important. And last but not least, the mundane suggestions. See, the conclusion part of the case study is very important because it is the finale of your case study answer writing. You are 20 marks you are answering. So at times I see the mundane suggestions are written. You write very big word that you will strive for the women empowerment. You will persuade the blazers. See, your suggestions should not be generic. They should be specific and actionable. You need to tell them that how exactly you will strive for the women empowerment, how exactly you will persuade the villagers. Whatever steps you are suggesting, these big words will not be of no use actually if you do not provide the actionable steps that should be written in your case studies. So whenever you are writing suggestions, provide actionable steps. Do not write these simply big words and आप सोचते हो कि हो गया मेरा case study. It will not be the case. Another important thing is you should not miss the systemic issues. I discussed that this particular aspect when I was discussing the shallow reading of case study. Whenever you are reading the case study, always take ethical cues from the case study. Also, do not forget to have the larger picture of the case study whenever you are going through the case study. Then short-term solution. Always identify the kind of solution you are providing, which type of problem it is addressing. Is it a type of solution that is a short-term or long-term solution? So you differentiate between these two types of solutions, that which part of solution, which part of steps will help temporarily and which will provide a long-term relief to the particular problem that you are addressing in the case study. Then please try to project your vision. More often than not, aspirants do not project their own vision with respect to the social issues that are being discussed in the case study. For example, there is a case study on child labor. The context may be anything. It may be a dhaba, it may be a school, library, anything where child labor might be employed for anything. So here you will be asked to write certain suggestions that what will you do in this particular case study. Whatever suggestions you write, see, you must not forget to give an overview of the child labor also, that how magnanimous the problem is, that how it will require the efforts of all, the government, the society, the parents especially, the institutions, the context that will be given in the case study. All those things you should write. The vision, that what is your vision, how specifically the child labor can be eliminated. So please try to project your own vision whenever you are writing, whenever you are concluding the case study. So that will help the examiner understanding what are your thoughts on the social issue that is being discussed in the particular case study. So dear students, I'm sure now you will be having a very thorough understanding that what kind of mistakes that are committed by the aspirants while they answer the case study section of ethics paper, and I'm sure you will not commit these mistakes when it comes to ethics answer writing. See, it is one thing to know the kind of mistakes that are being committed, and another thing to know that we should not commit them. Knowledge is not same as wisdom. Wisdom is the application of knowledge. So I hope that you apply this particular knowledge to the examination hall and not commit these mistakes. So let us meet very soon, and we will be discussing the other aspects of the ethics strategy sessions so that you can maximize your score. See you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.